what I do here, and I hope I'm modeling this for anybody who wants to become, a talk show host or a journalist, that everybody, that we should go outside of our circle of comfort to find answers, to the questions of the day. That if we are academics, that we should bang up against people who are on the, regular ass folk out there on the streets, people driving a bus, people, like people, because they're going to give you your insight and your answers. And it's why I love being in community with people that I didn't know were going to be in community until we built it. Right. So during the pandemic, we created a narrative, which was going to be, in my mind, first, it was going to be a publishing house because it's, narrative. And then I put that K there, like knowledge, but it's also, my name is Karen. I got a little narcissism just baked in because I'm a human being. That said, something happened, it's like we started having these conversations every Saturday, and I'm taking reams of notes, and it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So then it was going to be this repository, sort of like this Alexandria library, but digitally. And then it was like, okay, can we turn this into books? And it's like I had all of these ideas, and then it was like we had one Saturday where we were going live on YouTube, and I had to shut down the comments because they have systems. They have systems that can, create GameStop into a amazing stock, even though it has no value. They have systems, and I knew it was a system because of the kind of, whether it was bots or whatever. I didn't know what it was, but I was like, oh, something's happening. This conversation, they're trying to shut it down because they don't like how we're talking. So I said, can we create something where we can come and talk without them? And so when I say them, I mean people who don't want humanity to exist in its full form, which includes all of us. So Nubia was born out of that. It was, Nubia is not the spot. It's the space where it's home, where we can feel comfortable, hopefully, talking to one another. And what it has attracted is some amazing, brilliant people that I'm meeting for the first time, that have traveled together now to Kemet and other places. And I'll see some of y'all in them streets and Healthy Wealthy Wise or whatever. But it's incredible, the human capital that is gathered there. And this woman is one of them. She is a professor of teacher education, language education, multilingualism at SUNY Buffalo, in the Graduate School of Education as well. She is amazing. And let me welcome to the show, Dr. Tasha Austin. Hi.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes. And she is at Lagarde. Is that Lagarde?
That's correct.
In Nubia, and Tasha Austin, TashaAustin.com. Is it that?
TashaAustin.com.
Okay. All right. So you were listening, you were hanging out in the wings, listening to the conversation. And I was talking to you off mic about how academia almost prevents these kind of conversations from happening. Why do you think that is?
I think the design of academia and its roots and what it was made to do has it functioned to serve its original purpose, right? So if you're trying to restrict who has access to knowledge so that you can, capitalize off of it, right? So you have to make scarcity so that you can drive up the demand. If you need to restrict, then you do that by making things exclusive. You don't want mass access, you want reduced access. And so it became leisure and finances that equated who could enter the academy. And so the circle just keeps getting smaller of who can access the academy, who can even access the knowledge that is created in the academy, since everything's behind a paywall. And so, I'm not surprised that to this day, it still functions that way because that's how it was created.
Oh, as you're saying that, a lot of y'all who had kind of a halt on your student loan debt during the pandemic had to start paying again this month, October 1st. Student loans are back in effect, even though, there was a move to forgive student debt, which I thought was, should have happened, right? Because I don't even know if people are being educated to the point where it matters. Like, you're paying all of this money for what? But we also have designed society so that the higher jobs can't be achieved without the degree, right? So I tell my students, don't linger in here. Get your degree, major in whatever. Basket week. Nobody ever asked me my major. It was English lit, by the way. But no one ever asked me my GPA. I won't tell you. None of your business. Doesn't matter. Doesn't reflect who I am as a person or my level of scholarship, which has happened primarily outside of the classroom. It's doing this kind of work. So don't waste time. don't waste money. We were talking last week even about getting an associate's degree or getting those AP course credits and fighting for your children to get those course credits so that you're not spending all that money. Maybe go to a community college, come in with 2 years under your belt so you're not spending it. Like, we got to trick the system to get to where if this is the standard. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think follow the money is always the mantra in a racial capitalist formation. And I think what I've noticed is that the mechanisms by which folks were circumventing having to have lots of money in order to get degrees, like the jig is up. I think the larger institutions are starting to eat the smaller institutions. That's what I see from my vantage point. And, you know, I have colleagues who work at community colleges. I know the work that they do. I have colleagues who are supporting folks who went to a high school like I did that wasn't even accredited. And so by the time you get to higher ed, you still are looking for the fundamentals. If they're shutting those places down, again, we're reducing and restricting the access to these degrees so we can maintain the social stratification. So I'm watching that happen in real time. So I have a lot of faith because we as people, this is Black folks, this is minoritized folks, folks pushed to the margins, have been really resourceful in finding ways around, but it's such a minute amount of people that the structure stays in place. So that's my concern.
I bring you on to talk language because you know, every semester I teach at one of the most culturally diverse schools probably in the country. I want to say Hunter College. And this semester is no different. You know, there's like kids from everywhere, with mostly first generation, you know, parents from other places. They speak multiple languages. And we were having this fascinating conversation on Friday about how most of them speak multiple languages and most Americans do not, and how they are deemed, the immigrants, as not as intelligent. And so my students were talking about how their parents, you know, had to navigate this, and some would come here with degrees from other places, not valued at all. Like, you have an engineering degree from another country and somehow it's not valuable in America, although that's all math, right? It's like, math is math. I thought that was a universal language, but now you got to drive a cab because we're not going to recognize your degree. It gets even more insidious when you start thinking about how we travel. When Americans go and they call us the ugly American because we go to places that speak other languages and demand English. And then people who come here, we demand they speak American, even though they may have 3 or 4 languages already. And they're trying to navigate this car crash of a language that makes absolutely no sense with no rules. And, you know, for somebody that is steeped in this language space, how do you see it, Tasha Austin, Dr. Austin?
I think the patterns echo if they don't repeat. And so, you know, the notion that monolingualism or speaking one language that's supposedly pure is better than being multilingual is a facade. It's an ideology. It's a political move. And so the majority of the world is multilingual, right? And so only in bizarro world can less be more, right? And like, speaking one language is better than being multilingual. That's just not a fact. It's a political move. But you know, it's a premeditated move. It's an imperial move. It's not really geopolitically defined. Because if you think about people who speak English, the Anglophone world crosses lots of borders, right? Colonization means that folks would prefer English, they say, but they don't hire Nigerian Americans. They don't want Jamaicans. That is their first language, English. No, not you, right? So we know that it's a bit more to it than just English. And so I think a more critical way to look at it, right, is how are race and language being used interchangeably? Because it is being used interchangeably. And according to Cedric Robinson, one of the earliest forms of racialization was language, right? So when the original discrimination right in Western Europe was occurring, it wasn't phenotypic, it wasn't skin color, it was language and religion that they were using to create stratification. So that's what I mean about, excuse me, the echoing, is that as much as we know the pains and the violence of being, you know, attacked and discriminated against phenotypically, language and religion are some of the oldest forms of this stratification. So to see them come back like this,
it's crazy. It's crazy. I think a lot, right, about different things. And one of the things I was like, let's back map how the first person decided that we should put people in bondage. No, oh, let's go like the whole, so we know Portugal and then Spain and then, and we can kind of, but I'm like talking to Michael Harriet today, it was like even more insidious. Oh, I can get money, I can get land, I can get acres of land for people that I bring here who were indentured. What about the enslaved African that I don't have to free in 7 years? Boom. And now that because, oh, he's doing that, I can do that too. I get free land. So this whole welfare system of giving people things for is so crazy. But then I think about, I speak English and only English. I speak un poquito español, hablo un poquito, hablo un poquito. That's it. That's all. That's all I got. And I can cuss you out. And I know if you cussing me out, that's it. But not fluently to the way I can understand it. And it's wild to me that you can go to Nigeria or Ghana or any place in Africa, Kenya, and English is in the mouths perfectly. And it's wild. I know it was Great Britain that, from sea to shining sea had dominance, but who said, let's make this the language and then demonize everyone who doesn't speak it properly, the king's or queen's English or whatever the hell? Who did that?
I don't know if it's singular to an individual or an institution, but I can talk about the liberal arts, access to education, and how language was used as a marker of aristocracy, right? So only certain folks, even within European formations, had access to language study. You would study philosophy, Greek, Latin, right? Letters. So that kind of stratification of access to learning languages came even before the colonial era. And so you can definitely see that the vestiges of that traveling with the folks, right? And if you think about the folks who left, folks who were coming on these dangerous journeys to try to snatch a piece of land and climb up the social scale were not the best and the brightest. They were the folks who didn't have anything themselves. So one thing you know well when you're at the bottom is how to treat people who you want to keep at the bottom, because you know how you were treated. And so folks coming to the Caribbean and to the different colonial outposts of Great Britain, Spain as well, they knew, right, that if you use things like education and language and access to education to purport that you have more worth than they do, whether they believed it or not didn't matter. It was something that kept them in their place before they decided to take their chances on the open sea. So surely it could be used to keep others in their place. The only thing I can see from my research that makes the difference between white on white, right, or like European intra-discrimination using language and religion, and what's stuck when it came to African subjugated folks is that they needed to lock this thing in. Whiteness keeps moving and changing and shifting, and they didn't ever want to have the possibility of being back on the bottom. So how do we adhere class to the body? We need a way to make it stick
to
right?
The body.
And
so how do we, yes, we are here, Tasha Austin. So it's stuck now. Is it stuck? Because how do we unstick it? Because it is attached to the body. It is attached to the body.
There's a famous picture by a Afro-Brazilian artist, and it's like something about the curse of Ham. I got to look up the name of it, but it's a famous painting, and it shows like an African elder, like looking like she's praising God, and a white father and a mulatto wife and a young light-skinned baby, right? And it's called like the sins of Ham or the elevation of Ham or something like that, right? Pulling from that mythology that somehow Ham looked upon his father and was cursed. And so everyone who's the descendants of Ham are Africans, essentially, are dark-skinned, and that's the curse, right? And so that was used so long to justify the subjugation of Africans. But what's interesting about looking at that setup is the whole thing about it being adhered to the body doesn't even work either. Because if you think in the Brazilian context, in the South American context, in the Central American context, there's 27, I'm exaggerating, but all these different like levels of racialization, right? We used to have it in the US too, octoroon, quadroon, right? We used to have mulatto.
Mulatto.
So
Yep.
they still have all of those levels. But it's what you were talking about when we were off mic about flipping miscegenation. The one drop rule allowed for more property where there were less of us. But in places where there were overwhelming amounts of Africans, you had to do that pressure release valve. We can't have you all seeing yourselves as Africans because it's going to be Haiti again. So what we need you to do is feel like you can step up just a little bit, because we give you a pressure release, then we can sleep at night not feeling like you're going to come take us out.
Because you have aspirations. You want to be an octoroon or produce octoroons. They have 866-801-8255. Tasha Austin, you said you went to a high school that was not accredited. So how did you get here with your good speaking self and your PhD?
Because I'm Black.
What? What does that mean? What is that? What is that? What does it mean to be Black, ma'am? What does that mean?
So me being facetious, just having to navigate whiteness is a skill. And so, I have probably the most intelligent folks I know are the folks in my family without degrees, the folks who have had to navigate this thing outside of the system. And they really are just next level brilliant. And so for me, going to a high school that wasn't accredited didn't stop my mom from being superintendent of Sunday schools at our storefront church, right? It didn't stop my uncles and all them from running shop up and down all the pool halls in Brooklyn and winning and running their mouth and doing the toast and Stagger Lee and just this brilliance that they had. It didn't matter if they had papers. Like, it didn't matter if they had degrees that demonstrated it. And one thing that they knew is that they had a sense of self. So maybe they didn't have the paperwork, but what you wasn't going to do was disrespect them. What you wasn't going to do was try to tell them that they were not brilliant. They just knew they didn't have the papers, and they knew that in terms of eating or trying to secure that degree, it wasn't worth, right, giving up the sustenance of life, the material resources to try to get the paperwork. So they made do, but they never doubted who they were. And that was enough. My generation, I have 4 siblings. We've all been to college. We have 9 degrees among the 5 of us. We're good.
Look, you even knew to change between to among because it's more than 2. Like, I saw you in real time. So are you indoctrinated, Tasha?
Depends on what you mean.
See, I'm asking a question, even as you navigate, because you've learned how to navigate, and we all learn. And I think I roundly reject it, even though it's probably detrimental. Like, I just don't want to. I feel like, how are they gonna learn? How are they gonna learn if we keep doing this? If we keep modeling the very thing that they use to oppress us, how are they gonna learn how to do better?
So you mean in terms of when they go low, we go high?
Yeah, all of that. Like, the way in which we communicate, the way in which we comport ourselves, the way in which we, all of that. How are they going to learn the fullness of humanity if we model the homogeny that they want everyone in, except we know that we will never be accepted because it's rooted to the skin, it's rooted to the body.
Well, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, and it's like, are we code switching? Are we playing the game? Are we behaving like
all of it,
the dominant class? I think, I espouse more of the views that say we just all have lots of different ways of being that we pull from, and we pull it with purpose for specific reasons to deploy, right? This is how I'm going to speak because I feel like because I will have a specific audience, because I want to elicit a specific response. Like, if we think about it that way, rather than almost recreating the boundaries that they've given us, because where did those boundaries come from? Who said black and white? Who said English stops here and Spanish starts there? All of the boundaries were essentially constructed to create hierarchy, because it's not in non-Western knowledge systems to have these strict bordered binaries or hierarchies. It's not. And so the fact that we can navigate them, in that for the lack of language in Western colonial tongues to name what we're doing calls it code switching, because they need a binary to language it. If I'm not in that Western knowledge system, I wouldn't call it that.
Right. I love that. Dr. Daniel Black and I were talking a few weeks ago about being very specific about expressing ourselves. But many of us don't have enough words. So we fall back on, you feel me? We fall back on our lack instead of knowing all of it. Like I challenge my students, know everything and then do what you want, but you should know how to, like how you brought between back and did among, the difference. There are people that don't know the difference. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? But I just did it.
But
Tasha,
I have to be honest. I have no folks that do not mean I'm saying none of that. I support that.
You support all of it.
I support all of that,
yeah,
but mostly because
even if they don't know, do you support it?
Like, here's the thing. I always want more because I want more choice, because I'm a very agentive being, right? And I think all of us need to tap into that agency. I think that freedom is within us, but you don't really have agency if you don't have choices. And how do you have choice if you limit what it is that you're accessing in terms of language, ways of being, cultures? That to me is putting yourself in a carceral state. It's nothing wrong to me with having knowledge of a thing and then opting out.
Yes,
that's freedom.
That's the goal. I love that. More choices, not less. More space, more freedom, not less. Let's not put ourselves in these boxes or incarcerate ourselves when they want to anyway. Let's have it all and then do what the hell we want. I love that. I love it. I absolutely love what you're doing. Tell folk really quickly. Do you want them to read your paper? The limited capital.
It's $42 to download. It's a hot mess for you to get to it. However, if you search me up on YouTube, I have a lot of free talks. You can hear me talking about the concepts behind those paywall papers for free. And I encourage that, because I do my best to try to make my work accessible until I get a book out there, which is coming.
Let's talk about that too, but in the meantime, Limited Capital, A Genealogy of Culturalness in Language, teacher education, Tasha Austin, and go to tashaAustin.com and check out all the things that she's doing. I appreciate you being a part of this. And Lagarde, Leggard at Lagarde in Nubia. Thanks for coming in today.
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one